As misinformation spreads, local election officials step up efforts to educate voters. Later in the show, they're on a mission from God. Local nuns fight to preserve a landmark school for black children. But first, questions surrounding election security in the U.S. have never been as numerous or consequential as they are ahead of the 2024 presidential elections. Tomorrow night, WJCT presents a public conversation to demystify and explain how voting works with Duval election supervisor Jerry Holland. I'm joined now by Lanelle Phillman, president of the Jacksonville League of Women Voters. Thanks for being here, Lanelle.
Thanks, Ann, for having me. I appreciate it.
And in just a bit, we're going to be joined by WJCT News editorial director Jessica Palombo to tell us about the event tomorrow. For our listeners, what questions or concerns do you have about election security? Call us at 904-549-2937 or email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. You can also message us on Facebook or Instagram or tag us on X at FCC On Air. Lanelle, how perilous is the current moment when it comes to voting and election security?
Actually, it's pretty perilous. We have, in the state of Florida, seen a number of election laws that have been passed since the 2020 election, an election that our own governor and our Secretary of State at the time, Laura Lee, actually lauded as just a superior election integrity process. And since that time, we've seen a number of bills that have passed that really haven't done anything about election integrity. They've done a lot to create barriers between voters and the ballot box, vote by mail, third-party voter registration organizations. But what we've also seen is we've seen the establishment of an election integrity. I don't think that's the correct name for it. This the election police is what a lot of people refer to them as, even though that's not the proper name. We've seen them stood up. We've seen arrests made. We've seen some voter intimidation and voter suppression caused by them. But what we've not seen is we've not seen them address the misinformation, disinformation that we're seeing. We see it here in our own local community, but we're seeing it across the state of Florida and definitely across the United States. And what happens is we have these folks who come to our community and they sow seeds of distrust with this disinformation and misinformation. And it prevents people from turning out to the ballot box because they think that their vote isn't even going to count. So why show up? Or they do vote and then they question the election results, which we've seen that across the nation.
And I do want to get to some of those local efforts that you've seen here to provide to kind of sow that misinformation, as you say. But I want to ask first about, the disconnect between the actual problem of voter fraud, and the perceived problem as told through social media and through some websites.
Yeah. So I'll go back and again refer to the election police. They were established and they're empowered to follow up on, and I apologize, I don't have it in front of me, but there's like over 200 claims of voter fraud here in the state of Florida. I think everyone's familiar with the very public arrest of 20 individuals here who were arrested. But the reason that election police was stood up never seemed to actually bear out with the level of fraud that there were claims of being committed. And definitely things that we see on social media. Here in a moment, I'll talk about a way that we can do something about misinformation on social media. But people are really putting information out there. And if I may just mention a few things, and this will get to the event that I attended. But, they allude to the fact that we have invisible ink on our ballots so that your vote has already been determined when you show up at your polling location. They've led people to believe that all of our election equipment is hacked in one way or another, or that when your ballot is fed through the DS200, now we have DS300s here in Duval County. This is the machine that actually reads your ballot and counts it, but that it's been hacked and that it already it can read this invisible ink on your ballot. I mean, just a number of things, and people continue to spread that. And yet we have 67 supervisors of elections here in the state of Florida who have done an awesome job at trying to do voter outreach, and you're going to talk about the event tomorrow night with our own supervisor of election, Jerry Holland. But people have really got to stop seeing disinformation on social media and sharing it, and instead have got to start reporting it so we can do something about it and we can defend our elections.
And it's important to note that there have been a number of studies that have shown, actual instances of voter fraud is extremely rare, voter impersonation virtually non-existent. And the allegations of alleged fraud are typically mistakes that were made as opposed to deliberate fraud. The Brennan Center for Justice did an extensive report after the 2020 election that found actual voter fraud to be 0.000. That's 1/10,000th of a percent, as opposed to something that you would see online and it is indicated to be far more prevalent.
Yes, and there are organizations who consistently go to the Florida Capitol who ask for our election laws to be changed, who will tell you that there are millions of dead people who are casting votes here in the state of Florida. They will tell you that there are a large number of people who are not U.S. citizens who are voting. I mean, it's just, it's very unfortunate that that information gets out and it gets life, and people continue to spread it.
Well, we're talking about election security and about an event that we're going to be having here tonight, or tomorrow night, excuse me, at WJCT on election security. But we welcome your calls and questions. You can reach out at 904-549-2937, or you can email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. You can also reach out on social media. Lanelle, I want to ask you about an event that you attended recently. I referred to it earlier as a training session, which it sounded like to me, training members of the community perhaps to prepare for voter fraud that does not exist.
I would not refer to it as a training session. Actually, the title that it was given led me to believe that it was going to restore my faith in elections. I attended that event along with the League's voter registration director.
What was it called?
The name actually had something in it about restore faith in elections, and I apologize, I don't have that directly in front of me. But there were 6 local organizations who helped sponsor that. I won't give their names out. But I attended the event, and I have to tell you, it was somewhere between a church service and a political training event. The gentleman who came and spoke was very charismatic. You know, he really set the tone and connected with the attendees, saying, you know, hey, I'm just an average Joe. I was a professor at a college, and then big government took my job from me during the pandemic because he wouldn't adhere to certain safety protocols. He's also a former lawyer. But he was like, you know, big government came and took my job, took my ability to provide for my family and my children. And then he goes into his election spiel. And he has a documentary that he's created. And I don't know about you, but when I hear documentary, I think Ken Burns, I think Henry Louis Gates Jr., I think I'm about to be educated by a well-researched person. But it wasn't that at all. It was little snippets of interviews with people that you really couldn't catch the names or their titles. And he walked through a process of, from the moment you walk into a polling site, your vote has already been decided before you even walk in. But I just want to say, you know, there were over 100 people in that room. The majority of them, you know, my age or older. And I think they're just like me. I think they're good, hardworking Americans who want to make sure that we have free and fair elections. They want to make sure that every vote counts. But what happened in there, there was a big celebration about people who violated our Capitol and our laws on January 6th. There was a lot of prayer. There was some crying, like altar calls. It was very odd. But I really do think that whole thing was designed to really get in the hearts and minds of people who love this country and who also want to make sure we have free and fair elections. And then he just peppered the whole event with, a documentary, as he calls it, but really just a lot of misinformation that was designed to inspire them to go out and really ask for different types of laws here in the state of Florida, to include getting rid of paper ballots, getting rid of early voting, getting rid of vote by mail. I mean, just really have election day only voting in person. So it was very disheartening to see an event sold for what it was advertised as, and it wasn't that at all.
And it sounded like there was some element where he was instructing people almost on how to either, you know, intimidate or present a physical presence at a polling station.
He liked to use the word truth teller. I'm not sure if that's associated with a certain social media platform, but truth teller, I'm used to that. In civil rights organizations, we have truth tellers who stand up and will tell the truth about especially our African American and Black history in this country. But he really did. He gave a brief lesson at the end. He had someone pretend to come up and be a speaker at a public meeting, and then he had other folks come up and get on the stage with him and pretend to be either city council members, commissioners, legislators. And as the person at the podium was giving their 3 minutes of public comments, as they're allowed to do, it was just utter, I call it shenanigans. What the person was saying was just unbelievable, wasn't true. But when the person was done speaking, he said, "Hey, your time is up. Thank you for your comments." Again, this is role playing. But the gentleman continued to speak. He said, "Hey, you're violating decorum. You need to step away from the podium." And then he motioned for two pretend deputies to come from the back of the room and escort him out. And then he looked at the crowd and he asked, why is everyone still seated? Why are you still seated? Everybody up on your feet, up on your feet. And then to crowd around the truth teller, so to speak. And they did. And once they were crowded around the truth teller, he said, "Now look, where are the deputies?" Now the deputies are behind 50 people. And he's like, "Look, they can't get to the speaker." And now he can continue to tell the truth. And he really was saying, this is what we've all got to do. We've got to claim space in these public venues, and we've got to make sure that our truth gets told. So it's very interesting. That part, I guess, was a training session, and it was disturbing. So just made me feel uncomfortable for some of our elected officials and for other people who attend our public meetings.
And were there people that you recognized at this meeting, people that were either elected or in some position of authority?
So I will say there was an elected person there, and I, as the league, had reached out to him, but I think he had already heard about it and was going to be there anyway. And that's our own Supervisor of Elections, Jerry Holland, and one of his assistants, Robert Phillips, was also there. They were just there, I think, to bear witness and to see what kind of information is being put out in the community to the residents and to the voters of Duval County.
We have a question from Becca on X. She says, why did the election officials purchase partisan-colored polo shirts for all election workers? That's not something I'm familiar with. Is that something you're familiar with?
I will tell you, I'm very proud that they did that. I guess election workers, we've asked for that for quite some time. And I will tell you, I am a precinct manager out in Precinct 6. And we have red, white, and blue. And I do believe those are still the standard patriotic colors for our nation and not considered partisan. So I'm not sure where the information may have got out that they're only two colors. But they are red, white, and blue, and we love having them.
So for people who don't know, what is the work of the League of Women Voters?
So the League of Women Voters, we're a nonpartisan political organization, which means that we neither endorse nor oppose political parties or candidates. But we do take position on issues, and that's after in-depth study and action by our members. So, we were born, we're about to be 104 years old, the organization is. We were born out of putting women in the Constitution with the 19th Amendment. We did that. We wanted to make sure that women could cast an informed vote and not actually just duplicate the vote of their husbands at the time. And nowadays, we really have grown, and we understand that what we would have considered women's issues in 1920 are really the issues of all people. So we want to make sure that everyone is educated, engaged. If you're eligible to register to vote, we want you registered. And then we want you to actually cast that informed vote. And we actually have an online nonpartisan voter guide, vote411.org, which actually provides a nonpartisan presentation of candidates and issues for voters.
But this is not an exclusive gender-based organization. It is a community-wide.
No. We have some cool pins, finally, that say League of Women Voters, where men are in. And actually, since 1972, men have been members of the League of Women Voters. And on any given day, roughly 20 to 25% of our members are men.
I want to bring in Jessica Palombo now, editorial director here at WJCT News, to talk about an event tomorrow night. Jessica, we know that this is an urgent issue. What is tomorrow's forum about, and what does it hope to accomplish?
Yes. Good morning. Thanks for having me. We are having an event called How Voting Works, and we're bringing in Duval County's election supervisor, Jerry Holland. And it's an event for us, the people, to be able to ask him questions about anything that we might have heard about the voting process, and also get a demonstration of some of the equipment that you'll be using at the precinct. So we will have 3 pieces of equipment there ready to demonstrate. It's going to be an intimate setting where you'll be able to see it up close on a big screen. The EVID check-in system is one of the 3 pieces of equipment that we'll see. That's where you go and check in at the poll. There's also an express vote machine where you actually make selections, and then the tabulator. So there's 3 pieces of equipment that go into this process, and we'll see how each of them work. And I'll be asking him some questions that come from the audience, and just asking him about the security. How do we know that our vote is secure? How do we know that these pieces of equipment aren't connected to the internet so somebody can go in and change the vote at the last minute, as some people are alleging? So we're going to be seeing these things for ourselves, and we'll also be making a video of this event. So if you're not able to join us there in person, you'll be able to watch this later.
Is there any opportunity for people who might have questions to submit them in advance or to reach out during the program?
Absolutely in advance. I would urge you to email me. I'm at jessica@jaxtoday.org. That's JAXtoday.org. This is an event we are putting on through Jacksonville Today. I am the editor of Jacksonville Today. Please sign up for our newsletter. You can get it in your inbox Monday through Friday and find out about events like this next time. This is an in-person only event. Most of our events we do live stream. This one is not going to be live streamed. So there are definitely tickets available still. There are seats available still if you'd like to join us. It is at 6 tomorrow evening here at WJCT Studios. And it'll just be an hour-long Q&A and presentation.
So 6 to 7, 100 Festival Park Avenue here at WJCT Studios. Lanelle, what is it that you hope comes out of this event?
I hope actually people who, we call them election deniers very casually, but people who also have concerns about our election integrity, the process, the equipment, I would hope that they would actually come out and be in the room with the subject matter expert, Jerry Holland, and look at the equipment, touch the equipment, ask those questions, and then become like a positive virus. Go out and spread it in your community to those people who don't work in and around elections, who may be concerned about the election integrity here in Duval County and in the state of Florida.
And you will be there. The League of Women Voters will be represented.
Yes, I will be there. And I do want to get this in about election disinformation. So there's a website. It's called reportdisinfo.org. And I'm asking folks that as you see information that is misleading on social media, don't just report it to the platform. Please report it. You can include the links. You can include photos on this website. But it allows them to actually look at the information on the platform and not just a single post. And please don't share things that you question. Please don't do that. We say caring is sharing, except for when it comes to dis and misinformation. Please don't share that.
So when it comes to reporting to that website, do you suggest that people report there in lieu of reporting to the platform? Because it could be removed, I would guess, if you report to the platform and it's found to be false or misleading. Or should people take a screenshot of it before they report
So the
it?
reportdisinformation.org will actually address the platform if it's on X or if it's on Facebook or Instagram, as opposed to just that one post. They'll actually address the material itself to the platform. And then again, if you see something that looks dangerous, where people are making threats towards our election officials or election poll workers, that you definitely want to report to Jacksonville Sheriff's Office.
Can you give us that reporting site just one more time, Lanelle?
Sure. It's reportdisinfo.org. So it's reportdisinfo.org.
All right. Lanelle Phillman, president of the Jacksonville League of Women Voters, and WJCT News editorial director Jessica Palombo, thanks so much for being here and telling us about tomorrow's event.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.